2, 1. And we're there. Welcome to Matrix Talk. We're back. We're off with technical difficulties.
Move past them.
And now, I don't know, the wind's blowing like crazy at my place, so you never know. But I think even if I go away, Phil will still be here.
We could still, yeah. Yep.
Right, so we'll be okay. I'm looking for the chat. I had chatted in. So, folks, there's a bunch of you on, actually. And if you, one, you want to follow us, that's somewhere in the upper right-hand corner of your screen.
Yes.
That's a nice thing to do. If you're on YouTube, just go down to the bottom and, click on that more information, whatever caret, and you'll go to the Act Matrix Academy if you want to purchase one of the how to run an ACT-based clinic packages that we got going. And in the lower right, you can chat, which Jessica from South Carolina has already chatted in.
Good afternoon, Jessica.
And so have I, and so have Phil. So you can.
That's something else you can do. Chat in.
And by the way, if you're watching this as a recording later on, you can still chat in.
Absolutely.
It's nothing preventing you. Some people might notice like, wow, they've got a slide up. I thought I would do some slides in case people want to come back and see the recording. They can sort of fast forward through and see what we've had to say. So I guess anything more housekeeping, Phil?
No, other than what we said, you could click on the green button and check out our other courses, including our latest offering, which is really the title of our Crowdcast today. It's a 6-credit course, How to Run an ACT-based Clinic.
Yeah, and you get APA credit for
APA.
it. So, pretty cool. American Psychological Association.
In case you're wondering.
Right. And yeah, it counts for a lot, but not everything. So check out with your local authorities. Unless you're a psychologist, didn't count.
Yeah, you're good to go. Should be good to go.
So we'll go forward. So I don't know what I did on the first slide. Oh, we just show the ACT matrix. Okay, so we'll start. So here's the thing, folks. If you go to do this ACT business and you get lost in the weeds, because you can, there's a lot to it. That's the simplification. That's the process that you're doing. In the lower right is the, in quotes, values, and the lower left is the sticky stuff, the stuff that in ACT lingo you would need diffusing from. In the upper left are relief behaviors. Everything in the upper part is behaviors. And in the upper right, it would be called committed actions, which is the stuff you do in the spirit of values. And Phil and I say who's important. We'll get to that, why we say that probably here in a little bit. But you'll hear us refer back to this a lot because it's simple. It's really easy to do it this way, and in your clinic it's awfully easy to do it this way. So just to get that out of the way, and notice I put ACT-based clinic up here, so to remind you that that's what we're talking about today. Okay, and so hey, it went. We oftentimes reference a guy named Stephen Covey, who wrote this pretty cool book, actually, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And if you know ACT and just sort of know the philosophy behind it and stuff, you realize that Steve Hayes would call Stephen Covey a fellow traveler, meaning it's the same philosophical orientation to things. And we're not going to talk about all 7 of them, just the blue one there. Begin with the end in mind, okay? And you say, well, what's that mean? Well, that's very ACT-like, very. Because think of the values when you talk to somebody about values. What you're actually establishing is an endpoint out there. Or a nice way to think about it, at least Phil and I talk about, it's like a tree in the distance.
Yep.
So you're walking in a field and you say, well, how do I stay oriented or whatever? Well, you spot a tree in the distance and you walk toward it. And if you start to stare at the sky or the butterflies or whatever and lose track, you can always look up and go, oh, there's the tree, and get yourself back on course, right? And that's what the values of ACT are doing. That's philosophically, in practical terms, that's what they're doing. So, so you're going to begin with the end in mind. But in terms of running an ACT clinic, your end is different than your traditional stuff. And this is what a lot of people sort of, well, they don't do it in the most workable way. Let's put it that way. It's not this. And you'll see in a second, I'm going to show you. There it is. Okay. So in beginning with the end in mind, the aim of an ACT-based clinic is to increase psychological flexibility. Phil might want to repeat that.
I'll just say, period. How about that?
and then if your mind goes, whoa, what did he just say?
Yeah. Come again?
It is. That's it. And so a lot of times, well, I'll have it in here. It's right here. So it says, I read records all the time of other clinics. I won't tell you why, but I do. It's another job I have. And I see this literally every week. I'll see ACT informed, like psychotherapy or counseling, CBT informed, psychotherapy or counseling, and even motivational interviewing informed. Informed meaning, we're tipping the hat. We think we're doing it, but whatever. So let's get clear, folks. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is designed to fix thoughts and behaviors. It's a fix-it mechanistic way of doing things. I'm not dissing on it. I'm just saying what it is, and that's what it is. Motivational interviewing, which is a bit of a fellow traveler of the ACT.
Yeah, pretty close.
It is, but it's got a task.
Yeah. It's got an agenda.
It's got an agenda. There we go. And the agenda is to motivate you, to get you moving.
Yep.
Sort of. And it's got cool things. And I was actually trained in motivational interviewing many years ago. I'm old enough that I've had several previous lives.
Oh man.
But and I like it. I'm not dissing on it, but it has that focus of getting people moving, and that's an agenda, and that's not ACT. What's different in ACT, it sounds, because it's got ACT, like action, hey, and they'll think, oh, it's about, and I've heard people say this, it's about getting people to act toward their values, right? Moving toward their values. In that case, they're sort of borrowing over from motivational interviewing. Well, that's not it. It's actually the target is psychological flexibility.
Still.
That's what it is. And so CBT does not have that target, and motivational interviewing does not have that target. So if you're going to run a bona fide ACT-based clinic, you're going to target psychological flexibility. And you're like, well, how the heck do we do that? It's actually much easier than you think. This is the hard part. Wouldn't you agree, Phil?
Yes.
Of getting this straight.
Getting your head wrapped around this and continuing to come back to this as you go forward.
Because you're going to, that tree in the forest I mentioned.
It's not always going to appear before you.
and you are going to be distracted.
Yes. Stuff is going to show up.
Stuff is going to show up and drag you off in another direction, away from or off course from psychological flexibility. And that's because of the world, the mechanistic world that we live in. And you can blame Newton for it.
Yeah, pick somebody.
Whoever, and it's not that mechanistic stuff is wrong. We're not saying that. It's just not the target of ACT. It's not that. But all medical stuff, and I think I have a slide on this, is not. Now, here's what's going on, folks. And you've probably heard this, the 26 people who are with us. And people chat in. My God, there's 26 people here. Really? Nobody's chatting. Say hello. I'm trying to get the hang of this. I'm trying to figure this out. And it's not hard, folks. We're actually going over the hard part first. And the reason it's different is that ACT is based on a theory of language and cognition called relational frame theory. You probably have heard that, RFT. You were reading about ACT and you've read enough, and a bunch of you have seen that show up. Now, you didn't have a clue, really, about what was going on with it. And if you dive into it some, if you get the really technical books on it, you'll go and run away. Because it's dense, but once again, we can make it much simpler. But nevertheless, what we're doing is still based on a theory of language and cognition. The simple way to think about it, folks, is that we are messing with or changing, and what we're actually doing is flexing language. That's what you're up to. So we're not fixing depression. We're not fixing a broken leg.
We're not doing stereotactic brain surgery.
No, nothing like that. We're mucking around with language in the end. That's what we're doing. And here's the deal. Because of the world we live in, the language that we all use, you and your clients and everybody, tends to be awfully sticky. And you say, well, what does he mean? Have you ever heard somebody, you ought to be doing, or you should be doing, or that? Well, those, and most of you know, that's that's sticky. It feels sticky. Well, that's what I'm talking about. That's what we're playing with. So we're flexing up language all the time. So the main thing to remember is you're running an ACT-based clinic. And that's why this is the hard part, because you're going to approach it and you're going to learn, because it requires you to learn to use more flexible language. There's no way you're going to get totally flexible language. You'll sound like a nut, but you're going to flex it. And once again, it's not hard to do. It's just hard to remember to do, right, Phil?
Yes.
That's
a good way of putting it.
Right. It's the doing of it's pretty easy.
Yeah. Once you get the hang of it.
Once you get the hang of it, it's just that the world keeps coming at you and asking you to be inflexible. So, okay. So let's give some example. So us in an ACT-based clinic, we continually ask, are the words that I'm using working to increase psychological flexibility? That's really what you're up to. Your whole state of being becomes this psychologically flexible language producer.
Generator.
There you go. You're like one of them bubble machines in front of
Yeah, right. A little crank going out, right?
and you're cranking out little psychological flexibility
Little
bubbles
flexibility bubbles.
that are coming out of you.
That's a good.
And that's if you're doing diffusion with somebody, you're doing psychological flexibility. Okay.
You're doing it.
Now you got to be careful with the values work because you can get inflexible with that in a real hurry.
Yeah.
If you're doing mindfulness stuff, that's usually pretty flexible, unless you say something like you ought to be doing mindfulness.
Right.
You just pulled off all the flexibility. So here's some examples. You might say you should be exercising more. Did anybody hear the inflexibility? That's yikes. You might ask, what have you been doing to manage your depression lately? And my goodness, that's perfectly normal, isn't it, Phil?
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. Sounds very normal, but it's inflexible. It's not consistent with ACT. We'll show you how to make a statement like that consistent, but it's not. That's not it. And if you ask, tell me about how your life has been going lately, drum roll, that's inflexible too. That really blows people's mind. And then I have the why, question, ... Don't worry, we'll tell you why right now. We're not going to mess because people, whoops, it went backwards.
No, you're good.
Because people coming for psychotherapy almost invariably tell stuck stories. And if any of you have been into business a little while, you may have noticed this. And they basically show up and tell you how they're stuck. Okay, now think of it back to a language thing. If you're helping somebody or giving somebody a venue to, and I'm going to use the word practice, to practice telling their stuck story again, what just happened, Phil?
Well, you have just very nicely helped them to become more inflexible.
Right. They practice in a brand new setting.
Yeah.
If they're showing up for an intake.
Now they get to practice it with you.
And wherever you are, whether it's a video call or
Whatever.
in person or whatever, they're practicing telling their stuck story again. And believe me, that wasn't the first run through.
Nope. Won't be the last.
That was, right. And so one of the very first things that you'll learn about doing ACT stuff is ixnay on letting people tell their stuck stories. Now you got to let people talk. Let people tell stories and stuff, but you're going to teach them how to flex the story. That's really what you're going to do. So just be careful of just letting people go blah 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 blah, because they'll get themselves into a stuck spot. And of course, the more that happens, the more work you will do with them to get them back out of there.
Yep.
That would be like watching somebody shows up and you say, well, first thing you need to do in your car, somebody shows up in the car and they're on a nice dry road and there's mud all around. And you say, go ahead and drive over into the mud and get stuck.
Yeah. Well, let's start there.
Let's start over there. Well, we're saying, stay up out of the mud. Don't let them go shooting into the mud because that's what they've been trained to do. I'm not being mean or anything. It's what happened.
Yeah, we're all taught the same way.
And we're all taught. So just be careful of that. So as you're gonna, I had a little fun writing this, Phil. So
I can tell.
An ongoing task in running an ACT-based clinic is to clean up your language.
Yeah, I love it.
And I'm not talking about F-bombs here.
Yeah.
No, you're going to clean up and learn over time how to clean up your sticky language. But medicine, mental health is grouped up underneath healthcare, medicine, and it's just full of sticky stuff, just stuck language all over the place. That's okay. We can be different,
Yep,
right? We
yep,
can learn
yep.
to be different, right? So here's what you're going to do. Uh, Intake. Okay, you're at intake assessment.
Awesome.
And what you do is, of course, say, oh, just take 15 minutes and tell me what's going on.
Yep.
And what did I just say? No, 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 no.
Run that through your flexibility sensors for a second, folks.
You're probably going to hear a stuck story.
Yeah.
And you're going to have let them practice it another time. So that's like, somebody shows up you're an expert in some kind of sports thing, and you're going to let them keep on practicing their bad sports behavior, whatever. No, don't do that anymore. Let's practice the better way of doing it, the different way. So we're going to, now, how do Phil and I do it? We put a slide up. Well, first thing, we just use the ACT matrix to do intakes and assessments. We just do that. And you say, why is that? Well, it keeps us off the story. It lets people tell their story in a way, but in a flexible way. Okay. So we're going to teach them that ACT matrix. And the way we're going to teach them is get some informed consent and say, hey, can I show you something real quick as we get started? And they'll say, yeah, sure. You can show it. And I'll say, great, here's the diagram, and it looks like this. In the lower right, who's important to you? Tell me about who's important. Now, folks, that's a flexible question. And so, because it doesn't invite people to tell you about their depression or their anxiety or all that, it's just who's important to you. Phil and I have done this literally
thousands and
thousands of times, and it just works like a charm. And then the next question goes over to, and it sounds like from the lower left, here we go, and this is where you practice. And that's another reason that you use the matrix is that it gives you this forum to practice your language. And you're going to ask, what kind of yucky stuff have you, here comes the word, drum roll, Phil, noticed showing up? There's the three words.
There it is.
Noticed showing up inside of you. Now, I just asked them about depression, anxiety, anger, all that stuff without asking them about it. I called it yucky stuff. I framed it differently. I framed all of that stuff as just yucky stuff. And then I said, what have you noticed? Now, in the English language, and maybe in other languages, but when I utter out of my mouth comes the word noticed, the person with me is influenced to use a part of their prefrontal cortex. I know I'm getting crazy technical, but it's true. You literally
on the inside
to a special place in their prefrontal cortex that's used for noticing, meaning a distanced view, a mindful view, a present moment experiencing view of the self. So notice how quickly we actually got to one of the ACT components, which is present moment awareness. And we did it with a single word. Most people think, oh my God, I'm going to have them practice mindfulness.
Oh, it's going to be so hard. Oh.
Forever and ever and all this stuff. Like, well, okay, yeah, it's going to take practice. I'm not saying it doesn't. But you can start with a simple word, noticed. And everybody at ACT uses noticed. Just everybody.
Pick up any ACT book.
It's notice. And it's because it's related. There comes relational frame theory. It's related to that experiencing of seeing yourself, of being able to get up above yourself and look, metaphorically, of course, get back and look at yourself. And that gets at what ACT was originally called comprehensive distancing. And that notice is that word for that little bit of distance. Comprehensive just means we're going to make it more and more and more and more distance. So I go from the 500-foot view to the 10,000 foot, 30,000 foot view, like that. So that's it. Now the showing up, that removes the causality. Important in ACT. We're not going to do an advanced course. It's just important. Don't worry about it. Just use showing up a lot. Hey, what's been showing up inside of you lately? So even that is a present moment awareness question, because now the person looks back into themselves and wonders, what has been showing up?
What is going on?
And that's what that reflective, that thinker, that's what you're going for. This is ACT-based clinic, folks. If you're not doing this stuff, you're going to be getting away from doing ACT. You're quickly going to be, you're going to be doing stuck. Let's do a diffusion exercise. Diffuse, go back to stuck.
Yep.
It's a lot better on you and a lot better on your clients if you just use this language consistently. And you'll start using it at home and stuff. And nobody notices. Everybody likes the language.
Oh, they go right along with it.
They go right along with it. It's not a problem. It's just you're teaching yourself. In the upper left, what behaviors, or you could call them actions, whatever you want to call it, have you, here comes that word again, noticed yourself doing to get relief? That once again.
More reflection.
And hint, notice the use of the word noticed in the occupational hazard of doing
Can't lay off it.
ACT is you will use the word notice. And we'll get to more of noticing in a moment, but that's how you're doing it. So Phil made this diagram. Credit to Phil.
Oh yeah.
I added the words at the top and the bottom. So here you go. A flexible way of simultaneously, don't you love that word? Simultaneously assessing diagnoses, impairments, and stuckness. Yikes. Why would I write something like that, Phil? Because I live in a real world where people want diagnoses.
Because that's what they're going to be talking about. And it's there. It's the soup that we swim in.
Right. So it's not like I can ignore these diagnoses.
No, we have to tip our hat to them, right?
We call it tipping our hat to them. We can't ignore this stuff.
No.
I mean, we won't get reimbursed for it.
You got to put something down for diagnosis purposes and stuff like that.
Right, and other people are going to read our progress notes.
And someone might pick it up at some point. Exactly right.
And if they read something purely, let's say, psychological flexibility based, they're going to say, well, these people are nuts.
Yeah. What?
I'm quickly going to become part of the out crowd. Going to be shunned or something. So instead, we're going to throw it in there. Okay. So now you'll notice, sort of in the light green, in the lower left, you'll see fear and worry and overwhelm. Those are highly associated with depression and anxiety and
trauma, lots of stuff.
Trauma, all those kind of words can come in, and the person can tell you about them. Okay. Here's the big but they're telling you about them into the diagram.
Yeah.
So they're sending those words into psychological flexibility so that they can later be noticed. So in reality, the big diagnostic thing of ACT is stuckness. How stuck is the person? Because obviously stuck is the opposite of flexible, right? So this is all about flexing people up. But that's how, and of course you'll say, so what have you been doing what have you noticed yourself doing to get relief from worry?
Yep.
Now, see, I asked them a contemplative question. What have I noticed myself doing? Now, invariably, they will answer you because a part of their cerebral cortex did notice them doing it.
Most
You're
definitely.
just queuing up that part of the brain. So they'll answer you from, and here comes that other word, Phil.
Yeah.
Two words. Observer self. It's in ACT. Look in the books. So now you're on to all these questions are queuing up the observer self. Well, that's what we're doing. So you go ahead, impairments, so you're worried all the time. Does it have you noticed worry showing up and getting in the way of what you would like to be doing? We'll say that again. Have you noticed worry showing up and getting in the way? That's the impairment. Getting in the way of what you would like to do. Oh, yeah. I've noticed myself, and they'll say this. This is funny. It's not funny. It's sort of cool. It's like, yeah, I've noticed worry showing up, and I've noticed myself doing X. Well, that's an impairment because their behavior was focused on fixing the worry instead of what they'd rather be doing. That's what you're getting at. That's an impairment. That's what. So that's the difference. In case you don't know.
Yep.
I mean, everybody can have depression. It doesn't have to be impairing.
Yeah.
You're going to have depression and get on about your business.
Millions of people do it every day.
Right. No big deal. But some people get so depressed that then it begins to impair what they want to do. That's what we're talking about here. So the lower left of the diagram is getting at that diagnostic depression, anxiety, worry. I feel overwhelmed. I'm overstressed, all that kind of language. And the upper left is really about the impairments, but they're doing something. They're not impaired from doing anything, but because they're working hard to fix or get rid of the diagnosis stuff, that's impairing their ability to live a full life. Is that a good way of saying it, Phil?
That's an excellent way of saying it.
That's what you're going for. So that's how you're wrapping it all together. That's how this is all coming together. So you're tipping your hat to diagnoses and impairment and still keeping it flexible. That's what you're doing. Hey, how to run an ACT-based clinic, right? Progress notes.
You write stuff down, right?
Here's where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking. And if you read it, it's always like, the depression was better, worse, or the same. Their anxiety was better, worse, or the same. That's what the progress notes usually say, folks.
Yep.
People get busy, and that's what they write down. It's in our progress note writing in our ACT-based clinic. We want to help each other and help anybody else that happens to read our notes to use more flexible language. That's what we're up to. We're the flexible language people.
Yep.
And all of ACT is flexible language. And so we're going to use that. So now, when people get better with ACT, you can literally do this. You can actually quantify it. This is really interesting because there's not very often that I know of in psychotherapy that you can actually quantify something, but you can this. The person will increase their use of the word I said noticing or notice, either one, or noticed. So notice, noticed, or noticing. Some part of notice, they'll increase it. And you can literally count it. So if you had somebody observing your sessions and from intake to few sessions down the road, however many, and you literally count the number of times that the person uses noticing some variation of it, it'll increase. Why is that, Phil? That seems very deep.
Noticing flexes you up would be the simple answer that I would like to give.
It's also because they've heard you say it a bunch of times.
Yeah, they're picking up on your language.
They're picking up your language,
and they're beginning to use it because it's flexible language, and it actually feels good to use flexible language.
And that's the thing. And I would love to see research done on this, folks.
Wouldn't that be cool?
It would be cool, but it's like, is it dopamine that feels good, or
dopamine? Little hits of dopamine when you
dopamine. It's as if, and I'm not sure this is true, but it seems like this could be true, that when people,
I can picture that.
Right, use the word noticing, it's firing up some little part of the prefrontal cortex, and they're getting a dopamine hit. I sort of feel it myself.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel lighter.
Lighter is a good way to put it. You feel lighter.
And so because, and this is relational frame theory, folks, that experience of lighter, that lighter feeling with the word noticing, that feeling is related to the sound notice. That's I just gave you a little relational frame theory thing, right? So there's that feeling, and that feeling has been entailed onto or related to the sound noticing. I'm calling it a sound. It's a word, sound. So that's what's going on. So now, if you write that, yes, the person increased the use of the word noticing, the insurance companies or reviewers are going to think you're nuts, because this is just not well known enough for that. It's just not. And if you haven't noticed already, Phil and I are pragmatists all the way. I mean,
you work in the concrete, not the abstract.
Yeah. We basically did like street work, like prison work and stuff. we were in the trenches with.
Yeah, we didn't have the luxury of flowery words and stuff.
No, but we also knew we had to write notes that made sense.
And we had to satisfy the powers that be.
Right, to the powers that be. We call them the powers that be. So it sounds something like this. The client reported, here comes the word noticing.
Yeah.
So I did include it. They reported noticing blank. What's it blank? Well, it's increased, decreased.
Yeah. They're the same.
Depression, anxiety, whatever.
Anxiety is still there. Okay.
And now I've taught the reader, something. Oh, so they noticed. See, it's a more flexible way of doing it. It's just slightly more flexible, and that's what we're in the business of doing, is adding that little bit of flexibility. So we're taking stuckness that shows up, and we're adding flexibility by, for the most part, our language, and then hopefully down the road, the person has picked up more flexibility, and we're going to practice it by talking this way pretty well all the time. And we're certainly going to write our notes this way. So it helps us practice staying flexible. Okay. So enough said about that.
Yep.
And we're we are getting toward the end. Okay.
Yeah.
So with your ACT-based stuff, ultimately you're going to be asking about workability. There's that word. Workability. Stay tuned for next week. We're going to be doing a crowdcast. What's the name of it?
Determination with
determined. Determined free will plus workability.
Yeah, determined free will with workability.
And if you say what, then just look it up. We'll have fun. Don't worry.
Just show up. It'll be cool.
Believe it or not, it totally relates to what we're doing right here.
Absolutely.
We'll get there. But
We'll get there.
but in the end of the day, you're asking this question, and so the person in with you has been telling you they will. They will come back and tell you about what they noticed. That's it. The homework, there's only really one homework in ACT, which is go forth and notice.
Is it?
You're going to put something else after it, but basically the homework, and this is in quotes, homework. And oh, by the way, if you forget to notice, that's okay too.
Yeah. No.
Notice how I pulled any inflexibility off of that homework assignment. And so the person might say, you're saying that I get this right if I do notice, and if I don't notice, I'm right both ways? And you go, yes. And that's it. That's the totally flexible way of assigning homework. But nevertheless, it is noticing. And they will indeed come back and tell you they notice stuff.
Yep.
They'll tell you that. And so you get to say, you mentioned doing more noticing or something like that. Have you noticed if your behaviors are getting you toward where you want to go in life? And that, my friends, is the ultimate ACT question.
Mm-hmm.
That's the target. Where you want to go in life, that's to begin with the end in mind. Okay. So we'll get on free will and stuff later on.
Yeah.
And we could even say that your idea of where you want to go in life was determined. Fine. It's still where you want to go in life.
Yeah. It doesn't change the direction.
So we can, Phil and I, he does have a degree in philosophy. I have a doctor of philosophy. We love talking philosophy.
Oh, yeah.
But we're sort of like street philosophers. We're
going for what works.
We're going for what works. And so we don't care if it's determined or not determined. We're just going to ask the person, is it working to get you where you want to go? Now, notice we summed up all behaviors. If your behaviors, with behaviors, we're saying all behaviors from the time you get up to the time you go to bed, the whole package.
Yep. Is
that getting you where you want to go? And if the person says, well, I forgot where I want to go, okay. We'll talk about that. Yeah. You know, but you do need to have a target. ACT requires that target. And that's not inconsistent with it like a treatment plan. You know, it's not. It's just a different treatment plan. Instead of the target is to reduce depression, the target is to behaviors toward where you want to go in life. That's the target. Are you doing those behaviors? So that can include you fall off the wagon and drink. Okay, I got back up on the wagon and I went back toward where I wanted to go in life. Okay. I mean, okay, it just includes everything. So that's called workability. And Phil made a really cool diagram. Just hold on.
Oh, yeah, there's another one in here too.
There it is, man.
Yeah.
Phil's
like
cool diagram. That's all of ACT. So it has the is it working question all around because it applies to all behaviors. Because relief behaviors are perfectly workable sometimes. Like I take an aspirin to get relief from pain, so I can get on about doing what I need to do for life. that kind of thing. Okay, so here all behaviors are part of it, and you can notice all of this. Notice the big old noticing in the middle, and so you'll learn. And if you say, "Oh, we haven't seen that diagram," you can come back and watch this again and find it, and it may be out on the net. I don't know. We don't hide anything.
Nah.
And it'll for sure show up if you buy a course. And we have did we get that whole package, Phil?
Yes, it's all in there now. The whole.
All in there? Okay, so there's a whole package of sort of how to do.
Takes you right through all of this. There's
progress notes
6 months
in more detail. Obviously, we've brushed over, but we did want to give you the targets, what you're headed for. And really, when you show up to your ACT-based clinic, and if you're going to say you're doing an ACT-based clinic or ACT-based psychotherapy, just practice thinking, I'm promoting psychological flexibility. I'm promoting psychological flexibility. That's your mantra, right?
Repete après moi.
So, and if you get the hang of that, the rest of this stuff starts to fall into place. Why? Because you start doing behaviors that are consistent with promoting psychological flexibility. So we don't let people tell long stuck stories. And by the way, that stuck story thing, to get back on, it's why Phil and I just throw the matrix out there right away. Because then if somebody launches into a stuck story, and we'll let them go for a while. I mean, we're not rude or anything, but pretty soon they're going to say something within that. We're going to go, oh,
yeah.
that thing you said right there, yeah. That's the pause. But we're going to do it in the nicest ways. We're going to pause and go, well, where would that go up there on the diagram? Just like that, I queued up that observer self, the observer self. So the ACT matrix is your observer self tool. It just pops people right into it. It pops you right into it too. So that's how we do it, folks. So we can let people partially tell a stuck story. We just interrupt the stuckness.
Yes.
Have them throw it in. So that's how we go about doing it. So that's what we really wanted to make for sure. The point that, because if you go in saying, I'm doing an ACT-based clinic to decrease depression, whoops, that's sticky.
That's going to create some issues.
Well, it's an agenda. It's now all of this is an agenda. You can't get away from an agenda. Yeah. But it's a stickier agenda than I'm doing stuff to increase psychological flexibility in the service of people getting where they want to go in life. Yes, that's an agenda.
Yep.
But it's pretty flexible because I'm not telling people where they want to go in life. Not my life, so I'm not going to tell them. If you go to the school counselor, they might tell you.
Oh, they would do that probably.
The guidance counselor, that's it.
Yeah. Let me hand a sheet on that.
You need to go there.
Yeah, there you go.
But notice that, folks, that's not flexible. Now, that may just be what the person needs at that point in their life.
Could be. Yeah.
We're not dissing on that.
No.
Sometimes, especially an adolescent or something, needs to be given clear direction.
Yep. They're looking for it and they want it, and you give it to them and it works.
Right. So
now that's just workability.
Right. That's just not this.
Yeah.
So now you would know the difference if you shifted out of this,
right,
and went for the more guidance approach. You ought to do X. Well, we're not saying you don't do that, but now you know you're not really on ACT anymore. You're not talking flexible language anymore. Whenever you hear the words ought to coming out of your mouth, come on, or should, or all of that stuff is not flexible, but might be necessary though.
Yeah.
Just, life is not.
Still might be what the situation calls for.
Yeah, exactly. That just might be what you call situation calls for. Yeah. But in general, you want to teach people psychological flexibility because, or to get them toward this observer self. And the whole point, and we will end on this, is so that they learn, Learn, learn through experience what works for the life that they want. That's it. So it's a learning model. It's not a telling people model. It's getting people into an experience so they learn, the person learns what works. You can't.
Nope, we can't do it for them.
You can learn what works for you,
Yep.
but you can't learn what works for them. Nobody can. We're all little individuals running around learning.
Yep, they do the learning.
So it's this flexible learning, this ability to have this observer self going, this noticing going, do behaviors and notice if those behaviors work to get you where you want to go. And you don't answer that question instantly. You let your life develop, and then after it's developed some, you can come back and say, oh yeah, and it sounds like the on track. It feels like I'm on track.
Yep.
But that's the language. And that's all we got, folks. We don't have any more than that. It feels like it's on track. That's all we got. That's all any of us humans got. So
At the end of the day, yes.
somebody says, I know for sure I'm on track, get away from it.
Yep. Red light, red light.
I've dealt with way too many people like that in my life. No, this is flex. So I hope this helped. You can get our course. We're going to be doing more, even in a week when we do the determined free will with workability. You'll see.
It'll come through.
That fits too. And we'll show you about that. And we'll just keep coming back. But we wanted to give you guys some practical tools to do this work and to start wrapping your heads around. If you didn't get anything else and you carry forward, and the only thing you ever know, really, and repeat is that, the target of ACT is psychological flexibility. We did a great job.
Yes.
I mean, that's
mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished, really. Everything else is fluff.
Yep.
But, so there you go. And you know what, Phil? I talk long enough, the wind's not blowing so hard. So,
this is a wonderful thing.
And I made it through,
stopped over by me.
and I made it through without a
power outage.
Yay. And so people can check in, click. You can email us. You can
shoot us an email.
We're accessible. If we ever get so rich, that we're just flitting around on our private jet somewhere, we'll let you know.
Yeah, right.
That hasn't happened.
We want a podcast on how we got rich.
We're not really.
Don't hold your breath, folks.
That's not our. No. That's not our direction. We would like to see the psychological flexibility thing catch on. We're pretty sure it would help a lot of people out. And we even have some evidence of that, actually.
And we know it already has, exactly.
We have evidence that it helps people out. So, and what you're listening for, okay, so your target is psychological flexibility. And what you're listening for is people using the word notice more.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah, that's your tell.
That's your tell. It really is. But we're not kidding. It's really.
No, it's dead serious about that. Your tell will be, they will be using that word often.
And if there's no secret to it, you use it a lot. You teach them to use it a lot. And every time you teach it, you're rewiring or putting additional wiring in. You're adding wiring or connections, make it connections. Adding connections to the prefrontal cortex. Cool, huh?
Yeah.
Didn't know you were doing brain work, but you are.
And you never have to open them up.
And never met. Fun stuff. You guys have a fun. What's coming up? Oh, Patriots Day is coming up.
Patriots Day. Yeah,
Boston Marathon. Hopefully they have
Boston Marathon and people that might need to get their taxes done.
Yes. Phil, I think there's some things framed onto that.
Yeah. That's what showed up for me. But I already took care of mine, so I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. But, even if they are good, when some people says the word, Still
Oh
do.
yeah, it rattles down inside you.
I mean, even like the thought is, did I really do it?
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Did I sign the check? Am I?
Did I better check.
Did I put it in the mailbox?
All kinds of stuff related to that word. Okay, you guys have a fun. We'll
All right,
be back
take it
next
easier,
week.
buddy. Stay safe.